Ah, Kez, come on. Right, I'm turning him up a little bit now. This is starting to get precision shit. Right, me too. Okay, right. Okay, we'll go on. Yeah. So some of the people in, obviously the people in my chat who know who you are, like Kezbox. But for anyone who doesn't, do you want to just give yourself a little intro?
I guess I'm from the old generation of YouTube. I tried to join YouTube as like the old kind of atheist skeptic community. Atheist and skeptic was still alive in 2010, and I was away for health reasons. I came back in 2017, and everything has been going worse since then. So I throw my bitter comments at grifters on my channel whenever I'm not completely inhibited, but by my chronic illness. But that seems to fix itself somehow now. So you know, join the ride for amazing, journeys.
I didn't realize. So there's a little bit of backstory here with me and OneSpecies. We obviously like move in similar circles and that online, but I actually did remember seeing some of your videos years before we ever talked. But I just like a curiosity went over your channel earlier, and I didn't realize that the earliest video on your channel that's still up is from 9 years ago. Is that like the one that's still up? I think it's on intelligent design. Is that the first video you ever actually uploaded, or have there been some that have been
I,
removed?
I also had an intro video before that, but I made it private because it's kind of obsolete. I may re-upload it as intro.
Okay.
And then, of course, before I went after the alt-right, I was trying to understand what the center is. I was genuinely interested then. I was severely disappointed what the online center is. And I definitely, coming from coming back on YouTube, I hadn't realized the complexity and severity of the culture war. So, I start a bit offbeat when I came back, but, through various experiences and pieces of information, I found my way.
Was that the Jordan Peterson Sam Harris video? Was that like the big one for your return?
Well, I didn't know if it would be big or not because my channel was shut down for so long. Like the traffic was like my rating on the algorithm was abysmal. Plus, before restarting the channel, I deleted a bunch, I privated a bunch, so my view count went down. So that was even worse in the algorithm. But it scored a sensible 5,000 views when it was fresh. Um, yeah, but that one was basically motivated by um, Sam Harris being so annoying on matters of morality and free will.
Yeah.
And I had, apart from hearing about the C16 comments of Peterson, I hadn't dived into his character. I did the wrong thing. Because I was extremely depressed back then, and I had problems. I clicked on what YouTube served me out of Peterson. I clicked on what I found interesting, which was like 25-year-old lectures, which, if I knew the depth of his right-wing paranoia, I wouldn't have enjoyed because it would spoil it for me. But back then, being depressed and with the symptoms of my illness, like laying around, listening to that dude go through words like their shirts, it was, it was a combination of calming and curious. Like I was curious what he was gonna say, and it was also calming. Um, so yeah, so I came on the side of Peterson in their debate with Sam Harris, but now he has squarely taken place, in the pantheon of reactionary pundits, I guess, maybe for lack of a better word.
He's at least the talking head, like one of the yammering
Yes,
talking heads of that side of the aisle.
yes, but I still stand by the main point of that video that Sam Harris is wrong. You can't just simply derive a not from an is, and even when you do, it's you're just putting there your subjective interpretations of the ought. There's no way to have it objectively and also singularly informed by an is. And I like from Peterson, I like this ambiguity he allows, not in the scientific side of truth, but in what forms human beliefs. Now, of course, somebody's religion doesn't necessarily need to be in what we call the truth, but his argument is that people treat it as truth. That shouldn't make it scientific or factual or anything, of course, but when people treat something like the truth, that's what they base their actions, reactions, and survival planning on. And I think in that sense, it would never serve the truth to have just one word where we confuse what people believe to be true with what science shows to be true.
Yeah.
We have reality, which is the objective thing we can't observe in its full magnitude. Then there are our very meticulous observations that go through falsification, which is science. But, on the human level, sure, truth has to do with facts, but that's not the entirety of the interaction with people. It's our subjective interpretations of things, our subjective positions in life, no less, the mistakes we do, but we do form a body of things that are generally believed by very broad parts of the population, and they do drive motivations and decisions to a degree.
Yeah.
Even if somebody doesn't believe in a compatibilist free will and they believe in a conditioning somewhat of people through processes according to the behavioral model, still those things, over time, those beliefs do motivate, whether it's directly, as I think, or indirectly, as a behaviorist would think.
Yeah. So, okay, so just to roll it back a little bit. So this was the first video, this was like the big return video for you. So there was obviously the gap from where you started 9 years ago to 2017. I've told this story on the channel before that literally I completely missed the new atheist era on YouTube. I completely missed Gamergate. It was only John Tron v Destiny that basically got me basically where I am today. How invested were you in, because obviously you have extensive knowledge of Sam Harris and his positions and stuff. What were your experiences of as you said, you took a gap as well, but not necessarily just on YouTube, but what was your interpretation of the culture around things like new atheism back in the day, and how differently do you feel about it now?
Right. Originally, I was more attracted to people like Aaron Ra, and especially people like Phil Hellenes, who had a personal twist to their work. Like Aaron Ra is a very austere taxonomist, and Phil Hellenes used to do more like atheist. No, I don't want to call it inspirational. He was doing something like philosophical poetry, I guess, in his videos. And I wasn't very attracted to the Thunderfoot side, and I kept finding that side growingly annoying. They were some of the first people who had kind of like Gamergate or Groiper kind of punchline, kind of like, "Oh, you're from Greece, you have no scientists," or "Oh, you're from Italy, you don't know about this," whatever. Like the first time I saw something like that, it came from Thunderfoot timeline audiences.
Yeah.
And when I joined the English speaking YouTube in general, I did it because I wanted also to not only it included the most interesting people I could find to watch, but I want to get away from the Greek kind of like miniature politics where everything has like either a personal aspect or is connected to our Civil War drama from 70 years ago.
Yeah.
So I wanted like to be in a bigger community that could like talk about bigger things without being extremely short-sighted. But then I was observing that short-sightedness in parts of the atheist community. And at some point, sorry about that. At some point, my health started deteriorating, but I didn't know the reason. It was like 8-9 years later that I got the IBS diagnosis. And in the meantime, I just thought I had depression and something else weird. So I didn't know what was causing the whole suffering. But as my condition was worsening, it was also giving me negative moods, and logging on and watching atheists have like petty fights. It was like removing the fun or the glory for me.
Yeah.
Like, especially as a follower of those people, as a member, not as a creator. Because as a creator, I made what, 4 kind of big juicy videos back then, and 3 more short-lived, like very temporary ones, advertising something else. Like, so I didn't see myself as a creator then with back catalog. I was more of the audience type anyway.
Yeah.
And it kept deteriorating, and then there was this infatuation of Thunderfoot with Islam.
Oh, the Islam stuff.
Yeah, which did reach unhealthy levels very soon, because he was basically conversing about the topic at the same level of Pat Condell. And I think I remember him mentioning him too, which is very weird and ironic now that Thunderfoot laments Brexit. Well, we didn't get here out of nowhere. The biggest wedge that started the whole movement for Brexit, or at least gave it the initial momentum.
Yeah.
It was Islamophobia was one of the main wedges.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, because the thing was like, I think it's easy for some people to, especially obviously if you're not in the UK, that to assume that like Brexit is a very recent phenomena, even though obviously it's been going in its current form for like 40 years, basically, since even over that, since we joined the European community in the first place. And obviously UKIP actually started out in like 1998 or something under Nigel Farage. So it is a new phenomena, but as you say, the momentum etched up around the turn of the century of 9/11 and that, because obviously Islamophobia and became like obviously like a the focus on it increased obviously. But there's still the background radiation was always there, the anti-Brussels sentiment, the memes about like straight bananas, you're not allowed, everything's, the Euro police are going to come over and change all of our road signs to kilometres, all the nonsense gained this edge to it, in many ways very vicious edge that you sort of alluded to. And it seems that a lot of the figures behind that, people like Sargon, were the ones who came out of the new atheist era of YouTube. And one thing I wonder about as things have developed is that I wonder, and you'll be give me perspective on this, but go back and watch like the old Christopher Hitchens Hitch Slap videos. I sometimes wonder if like the people who would have rallied around people like Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and that, it wasn't really the substance of what they were talking about that they liked. They liked like the gladiatorial side of it. They just liked seeing Christopher Hitchens smack down some creationist. They weren't really engaged with his reasoning or how like logic, you'd come to sort of logical positions and things. Do you think that's a reasonable analysis?
Yes, it looks like it was more about the tribalism than about the rational part that preceded the slap.
Yeah.
And you could see, I've noted, like, I don't know how if I ever documented this sufficiently to ever present it to another person, But just by clicking on things for years, I can vividly remember that accounts who were kind of like trollish or seemed like more similar to what we would today call a Groyper account, they always found a way to flock around specific atheists, not the other ones. The ones who were more tribalistic or more, exaggerative in their critique. For example, you could find this Space Jew account
Yeah.
that was under Thunderfoot videos, but then you can find the same account under Metacore videos in the later years.
Yeah.
And the account name and combination with an avatar from, I think, Babylon 5.
And it was wasn't it Quark from Deep Space Nine? It was a Ferengi.
Yeah, I don't remember the tribes or stuff from that, but I think yes. So, and that became a meme to the point where some years ago, you could find many accounts by that nickname and that thumbnail. So that doesn't necessarily prove much, but it shows that just like Thunderfoot was on the precipice between shitposting and rational bro, so was the audience. And these people often demonstrated. Now I know one combination of words that drives rightoids and centroids mad when I use it, especially on Twitter. Dunning-Kruger. Yeah. They always assume it means when I use it that I think I'm smart. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean I'm smart. It means that at the very least, I have a chance of, my estimations of my knowledge and my knowledge being close. That doesn't prevent them from being low. You know what I mean? In any case, I mentioned that because when I felt the need to find a combination of words that describe this, I didn't know Dunning-Kruger effect before that, okay? Maybe I found out about it in a criticism of a creationist somewhere in that video sphere, but it was around the time I found out about it, and I really needed those words because it was the only thing that could describe the sort of shallow arrogance that you would find by Thunderfoot viewers. And I know it kind of sounds here like I'm dunking on him, but there are not many options. The guy clearly made 25 videos on Anita and 10 on Rebecca Watson. He added to the mortar and brick of the culture war. And I'm not doing any negative commentary here. I'm just trying to trace it back. Where did it start? So if I trace it back, what that looked in the original atheist community, it was this arrogance that, we know and you don't.
Yeah, and also, sorry, go on.
Which kind of many atheists allowed it to flow on all topics. For example, obviously a creationist is wrong on evolutionary biology. The degree to which they are wrong on other matters is debatable. You can predict they're probably wrong about abortion and gay rights, usually.
Yeah.
But taking that as a license that you are generally right and your head is well on your shoulders, but they are the dummies, you're just giving yourself arrogance points, while, experience says you're probably not you, the hypothetical cringy atheist. The hypothetical cringy atheist is probably just as bad as a person overall. He just has subjective twists of his mind elsewhere.
It's almost like it's like dogma from the other direction. You've dug yourself into sort of an ideological hole, but without realizing it, just because there isn't a religious context.
Yeah, and that ideological hole was extremely dry, because as I saw it, there was these normal atheists that I liked. Okay, maybe normal is not the best word, but they were doing what I expected. When there was dangerous religious rhetoric, especially involving some form of child abuse, they would voice very strong criticisms. Other of them would try to raise awareness. Others would break down, harder topics like, how do cults behave? How do they force people in? How this, how that? And others would do great biology videos without going into any of the tribalistic things. And I liked all those categories of people very much. And I never got a vibe of arrogance or misanthropy or inflated ego from them. But then I would watch kind of like the other side, which Thunderfoot was part of, and not necessarily people close to him. It was pretty random of who was on that wagon. They were exuding this not only arrogance, but also kind of narcissism and intellectual laziness. And they were basically trying to form. Now, these people supposedly later hated identity politics, but they were trying to form an atheist label that somehow means they're also smart and correct. And I was never impressed by that, because I'm an atheist since I was 9. So you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like they built cults around themselves and then started to buy into their own hype. Particularly, I would assume someone like Mr. Carl of Swindon, who as someone who's definitely taken on that mantle as like a thought leader bordering on cult leader. I would think, at least at this point, that's the way it seems.
Yes, that's definitely the way it seems. Continue, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, that was just my thought. It's just because this was all part of like a thing I wanted to get into, because as I say, you have a lot more experience in this because you've been invested in the community longer. Because you were like you've been friends with people like Kraut and T and everyone like that. So I think your perspective has been interesting, because you've always struck me as someone who has, as you were sort of alluding to a little while ago, you were never impressed by a lot of the sort of more pernicious aspects of all of this, but at the same time, you did still have a foot in that world, so you got to see all like people's progression. And so you're saying generally, like, you noticed, especially from the big figures, it just got worse, basically. It degenerated into narcissism. It degenerated into these almost cultish mentalities. Do you think that's, like, the overall arc for most of these people? Or do you think it was just, like, for the key big figures like Thunderfoot?
I think, sadly, it was the arc that took place for most of the surviving, in the sense of creator and channel, of the surviving figures, meaning the awesome, humble, and very well thought people that I used to fanatically like don't make stuff anymore, because we terraformed the internet for rude assholes. And it's not that those people are offended or whatever, shallow the skeptoids would throw. It's that those people were doing it not for clout, not for money. They were doing it for fun and as a gracious gift back to the community that once gave them things to think about.
Yeah.
Like, for a time, there was this very good atmosphere. It wasn't competitive. It was just people were enjoying each other's work. Nobody was trying to compete everyone else on the number of videos they would release in a week or anything. Back in the day, basically, you could go on your subscriptions page and have no new videos for 48 hours or something. People didn't do this for money. So it was a very nice atmosphere where people would produce stuff, and the people who would consume it would be grateful. That's original. And Anyway, I'm stuttering here. I can't put this into words, but it was a very nice feeling. But then it started being competitive, and some of the personalities were like, "Oh no, you're not a real atheist because this and this and this. And no, you're not a real skeptic because," and they started doing the tribal thing, and it's just that it stopped being fun for the most interesting people. They
Yeah.
weren't offended. They just didn't need that part in their life. They didn't need endless salvos of weird comments they don't care about. And they didn't need to make a video and have it buried at 180 views for like 4 years because the algorithm feels funky.
Yeah.
Back then, when those people made a very good, badass video, it would climb to the thousands and thousands of views, which is not, back then, it was not about clout. It was about the idea that your message traveled, okay? But if it stays at 100 views, for example, well, you feel like talking to yourself in a cupboard, right? And so all those people, I think, were demotivated by both the audiences, the progression of the platform, and what the discourse became. So the answer to your question is the let's call them more healthy atheist people from that era. They could well outnumber the obnoxious ones, and they could well be out there living awesome lives, making the world better from their position in life right now. It's just that they're not in the attention machine anymore. We don't know. It's like they left the attention machine. It used to be a good kind of like hanging out machine, the internet. Now it became the attention machine. So they left it. But the people who left, the ones who have viable channels under the algorithm regime, I think most of them are kind of the worst, if you think about it.
Well, I mean, it's part of just beyond the fact that they sort of, the people you could say were the best have just fallen away because they lost the sense of community. Obviously, part of that will be because of a financial incentive. The worst people, found ways to monetize their work, and obviously a lot of that comes from drama and outrage and triggering the libs and shit. So yeah, that would have pushed them away further because not only were they not getting the same sort of recognition for their work, they'd lost the sense of community, but also the worst people were almost financially benefiting from it. So that must have made it incredibly galling and disheartening on top of that to watch people start to make a living out of what they were doing, and they weren't even the ones producing the best content.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, the style of now I think more modern, more recent generations are a bit more possessive with their internet tools and access. I think the people who are not like particularly old, but the people I used to watch see it as a social space. They don't necessarily see it as an access or an account. So they see it as a social space. So if it starts smelling funny, they just leave it.
Yeah.
Just like you do with a social space, So they didn't make any big sound on the way out. They just either left or faded. And, a couple of the people I've mentioned, like, for example, Phil Hellenes, he used to have a steady viewership of like 25 to 85,000 people per video. But his greatest video, like, I think it's Science Saved My Soul or something like that. It picked up like 1.5 million views in 2 years. It at some point it went viral in the first year, and by the start of the second year, it was like, which back then for a completely unpromoted, completely profit-free channel was like pretty big.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Did you
Yeah,
see? Sorry, go on.
No, last thing. It was like people didn't make videos for this reason, but at the back of the head, the idea that it's a fair platform, and if you actually make something very good, it will be promoted to many people for them to watch. It used to kind of like, it wasn't a major motivator, but in the back of your head, it made the whole process feel right. It felt just. At this point, there's nothing good you could make and YouTube would promote it unless you upload every 12 hours anyway.
Yeah,
So
the
there's no
landscape's completely changed in terms of how the algorithm runs, and obviously, like streaming. Obviously, the irony of saying that while we're on a Twitch stream, yeah, that's obviously mixed up the dynamic. You know, for example, Sargon can now release like a 30 to 40 minute video every single day if he just like cuts up the VOD. So that's like pushed the quality of the content down further.
Yeah. I mean, people used to have like a vision for what their next video is going to be about, and they used to have like a creative process. Now it's like, all right, what's on the news? Right, slap it on the plate, throw on some ketchup, drip, drip. We're ready to go.
Talk about cultural Marxism and the left. Cancel culture, trans people, the trans supremacists, them dreaded pronouns comes to mind. That was a really cool video, by the way. I think that's one thing I like about your content is that, like, and to some extent you've got a similar model to people like Sean and Three Arrows, and that is that you do, you know, you take your time to produce content. Obviously, you work in like graphic design and stuff, don't you? That's why you've got such a high quality in terms of the content. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I work in visual arts and usually video production.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing,
just an
yeah.
asterisk, the production could be a lot better and even more frequent. It would never be extra regular, but it would even be more frequent. But my IBS is keeping me down. Just
Yeah.
let me remind this. Thanks.
I was going to say as well, like, one thing that I found really interesting, especially over the past year, was the return of Kraut, because he's almost like antithetical to what we just said about Sargon. Is the fact that literally, like, he is like, I know there are legit reasons to really come down hard on Kraut. I think, especially like
Yes,
looking back to his past, but still even to this day. But honestly, I think he's producing some of the best YouTube content I've seen. Like, honestly, and this is going to be a big claim to make ever. Like some of his recent videos, especially his things on like the history of Turkey and things like that, or his one on like systemic addiction and stuff like that. I think these are actually some of the best YouTube videos ever made. And these are very long form, animated, incredibly well researched. But, you know, despite the success that he is having, and he's having enormous success with these videos, this is not the game in town, is it? Like, this is literally not the bar that the content is like set at currently. You know, even to this point.
No, it is, but on any other topic than politics.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
If you go to history videos, they're excellent. Crowd has plenty of people to compete with. If you go to science videos, there's a galore of animation and lengthy documentary style videos. And I'm still talking YouTube here, right? Not Netflix.
Yeah.
And other videos with time lapse and other kinds of science and other videos. Like, every single community has a very good chunk of creators on top that have high production standards and sometimes even high ethical standards, apart from the political community in YouTube. And by political, we mean the hybrid of the actually political community, like Sam Cedar, being polluted by the skeptoids.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have their own separate political community, okay?
But that's the trick with someone like Kraut, though, is that he is despite the direction he's taken, the fact he's trying to remove his own personal opinions from his work, he will forever be tied to that part of the community just by virtue of his like online persona and his own history. So in a way, that's sort of distressing to watch as well, because, you know, as I say, he's producing this content which would is set to a standard similar to other history videos, and it would compete in that market. But at the same time, he's still tethered, like a ball and chain, to dimwits and dumb fucks like Sargon. So that's a really strange dynamic, I think. It's about his personality and his community sort of ties, despite how much he wants to get away from them.
Yeah, and look, he's being a bit of an ass on Twitter, and that attracts more asses. So he's definitely not going to sterilize the environment, but his own inner disdain for this sort of narcissists, it will always keep him away enough, I think.
Yeah, I think it's in. Did you see Chud Logic's conversation with David Sharat last week?
No, I want to watch the VOD. No, I missed it.
It was.
I had a few rough weeks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, it's one of the best conversations that Chud's ever had. One thing that struck me about it was because David has again a very storied past. The thing I found most startling about that conversation was like how uncontroversial a lot of the takes was, even though you will find out when you watch it. Especially after they finish talking, Chud's chat went a bit rabid. But it was interesting because Chud has done this in like 2 of his last conversations with people. He did it with David and he did it with Lext, and he basically asked them for their advice on anyone who's like watching their stream and like is thinking about starting to make YouTube content, especially political content or social commentary content. And both Lext and David turned around and said, "Don't do it." Like, I think that's a really surprising thing. And like even a couple of years ago, I don't know if anyone would have been that sort of blatant in just saying, "Don't start." If someone came up to you and like said that they want to start like similar content to yours, or they just want to do like streaming like Chud does, do you share that same sort of wariness and cynicism?
Well, my first advice is like you like there's no winning. Like this is going to be just a consuming process. Like go forth at your own peril, but this is a thankless ride.
Which is a good thing for someone who's only been streaming for a month to hear. But no, I do get what you mean. Like I had back in the day, like a couple of years ago, I was like a film YouTuber. And I do understand like the sentiment of that, because you can pour so much into it and not see any returns. Not even just necessarily like making Patreon money or something. The exhaustion, the hard work, the drama and stuff. So I do understand that. It's just an interesting dynamic, in terms of how these things sort of play out and how rose tinted and seduced people are still by this idea that content creation is going to be roses and success. Despite the fact that there's a lot of evidence to the contrary.
For me, it's not so much about the income or anything like that, because I've never monetized anything. Like I've never made money from this. And when the advertisements were on my channel, I had opted in just to get a little bit more viewership through the algorithm. I didn't do it to get like $8 per year or something.
Yeah.
But excuse me. But the part of my motivation that I lost is that you can make any amount of arguments and then have a bag of manure like Sargon say, "You see, this guy is an identity leftist." And okay, what does that effing mean?
Yeah.
Because I've been kind of on the lefty side for some time now, and I have never seen a specimen we call or who calls themselves an identity leftist. I guess if you have pronouns on your bio, I don't know, but I don't, so I never realized what. I guess Sargon means somebody who plays into the identity politics, and then he's like 99% identity politics anyway.
Yeah.
But my point is, my main frustration is that one, the platform won't carry the video far away. I used to get like most of my views from non-subscribers, not subscribers.
Yeah.
Now it's the other way around. That's annoying, because I don't care if people okay, it's nice when people commit to watch more videos from me, but like that's not the main motivator. The main motivator is the people who would click on this topic, and so that motivation is gone from the algorithm. But the main motivation that is gone is that there's no big, generous, nice discourse here. It's, if you're from that side, we have to take you down no matter what, and we have the 4chan trolls on our side, so you lose, buddy.
Yeah.
And it's okay. That's the biggest thankless part for me, because when I put the effort, I'm not thinking, haha, I'm gonna make money. I'm just thinking my presentation would be clear enough and at least defined enough so that nobody can discard it as nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
But it can happen because, you know, whether it's nothing or not is now decided by the figureheads on screen. So
Yeah.
anyway, at least I have some fun when I do the graphics, and you know, I learn something for my work, and I learn something from work to do here. So it's all fun. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But they turned a nice space of discourse into a very aggressive, attention dollar milking economy.
You haven't been on any streams for a while, have you? Because I remember, was this? I mean, it might have even been about a year ago. But I remember you were sort of talking to people like oh, what's his name? I can't remember his fucking name.
Bitch, friended.
Yeah, that's it. Adam Friended. Yeah, and I know you had. Do you have a conversation with Dankula about this time last year as well?
Yeah.
Why do you? What was the motivation on going on those? Like, why did you feel like, if you've been sort of in this mindset for a while, what was the appeal, or you felt the need to go and engage with people like that?
First of all, on the Sitch and Friended stream, I didn't think about it much. I just told them something on Twitter, saying, hey, that Cody Johnston whatever video on cancel culture is not complete crap. I don't know why you're all crazy, as if it is. And they said, come chat about this on the stream. Oh, man. Okay. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. But so that one I didn't think too much about. The Dankula thing is because he was... it was the fashion, before Trump became full fash.
Yeah.
In the intermediate period, like 2017, 18, what was fashionable was the free speech absolutism. And I had streamed, I guess now 2 years ago, with Uzulu, which, although I don't like the guy and he doesn't like me, was one of the actually most courteous debates I had with a disagreeable debate partner, let's say. So I was still interesting to hear how can these people who always have objections about other stuff and always want to limit other people's speech, how can these people claim absolute free speech all the time? And the debate with Dankula was actually to happen months before it happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a really bad IBS night, so I wasn't even awake at the time of the supposed debate.
Yeah.
And the night it happened, I didn't act as if it was a debate because we didn't eventually set it up as a debate at all, because he wanted to cover a content slot because he was tired of moving house. And exhausted and hadn't anything prepared. So he sent me a quick DM, like, can you do it now? And so it just went like more of a goodwill conversation I tried to have with Dankula.
Yeah.
Which then turned bad faith because, when the hours racked up and he hadn't dunked on me in a, let's say, impressive way, he went for the low blows and the straw manning and the fucking, all the other stuff these people do. And then it was crap. So to summarize, I tried a bit because all these people want to talk supposedly, but I was severely frustrated by how they actually treat a conversation.
Yeah. I've never been able to get a read on Dankula. One thing is just I just find him incredibly inane and annoying. But is there any like principles there in your opinion? Like, is there actually someone underneath who actually has something serious to add, or is he literally just someone coasting on everything that happened with him with his prosecution and that, you know, he enjoys the attention? Is that like literally his motivations, do you think, or do you think there is actually someone under there with principles and values that he thinks are worth communicating?
Look, this is in the mind reading territory.
Yeah,
It's
of
not
course. Yeah.
something. It's not something we have solid
Yeah.
proof on. But what my impression is that, you know, the qualification skill set of Dankula is not exceptional. His job prospects, even before his court case, weren't exceptional either. So the idea, he's on the original 2015 hook of YouTube, which is the idea that you can just fool around a bit
Yeah.
and then make a slightly more serious, slightly more edited video every once in a while and make a completely luxurious living out of it. I think that's a very big attractor.
Yeah.
And if you perceive some, you know, internet grannies that want to whine and take this away from you, you attack it and you don't care. Like, Dankula is not really complicated. Okay, he has identified what he wants to do, and he's chosen to promote everything that he thinks secures what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Of course, he's a fool, because if the people who he supports, either directly or indirectly, let's say, won the war in politics, he would lose what he wants a lot faster than he would ever lose it if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I see with him is that he's not stupid per se, or too ignorant or anything, but he likes to take that position because it's so much easier to defend.
Yeah.
It's like when you're a kid and your parents keep telling you something which is important, and you're like, either I can't hear you louder, or I don't know these words, I don't get it. You know, it's the easiest way to defend and attack. And it's also a way to keep a nice audience of low expectations.
Which again, I don't necessarily I don't know if it's the wrong way of saying it, but I can't necessarily judge him that hard if he's found a formula that works. I'm not going to say I respect him for that, but at least it's interesting that he's like cognizant enough to like capitalize on the circumstances in. So in some ways, I do respect the fact that he knows, you know, at least on some level, what he's about and what works. So I have like a cautious respect for that, even though, you know, it sort of basically goes against any principles I might have. You know, as you say, like, it's impossible to read anyone's minds, I guess. But it is, I'd say, I was just curious, just because you obviously have that personal experience with him and friended and Stitch and that. Because obviously it's something I can't necessarily relate to. Because I basically, you know, I don't associate just with people I always agree with, but, you know, it's obviously I'm on a much smaller scale than you. Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm on a small scale. Don't worry. The thing is, I like conversing with people I disagree with a lot, and even strongly. And in the old YouTube, it was almost possible. But there has to be a minimum standard of, like, I don't want to make money, I don't want to gain viewers, but you have to show like some minimal respect about a basic decency in the conversation itself. Okay, you might take any decent moral position in the conversation, but, you know, if you're trying to interrupt me every second, strawman me every other second, and have red herrings and thought-stopping cliches for everything else, then like, I feel I'm just trapped in an old tractor that doesn't work. I don't like the experience. Okay. it's not that I don't like it. I don't think it gives anything useful anyway. So
There's no
that's
value to it.
yeah, that's my minimum, because in terms of personal feelings about a person, before I had my debate or discussion with Uzalu, I had much of a lower opinion about him than Dankula or Friended. But at least there was a limit to how much he would strawman me. There was a limit to how far he would fetch the goalpost, and there was a limit to how like disruptive he would try to be with indirect comments.
Yeah.
So he kept that to a reasonable degree, which is also, I understand you want some engagement, you want some entertainment, some of that, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But if I have to kind of breathe like a Formula One driver just to get past the corner, no, sorry, like this is not a conversation.
How do you feel about, because there was a video that did the rounds not too long ago, I probably should have prepared it. It was basically like I don't know if it was Prime Kai's panel on Twitch, but basically there was a group of I think they were all progressive content creators talking, and basically one of them pointed out the fact that everyone on that panel, they were basically, you're part of a circus when you have a conversation, like when you appear on stream with someone in like a political context, whether or not it's with someone you disagree with or people you do agree with. And everyone else on that panel got incredibly upset with this person for basically pointing out that, it's, well, obviously the term blood sports, internet blood sports is obviously a bit of a loaded term because of, what it became associated with. But do you think there's any value, like intrinsic value to that sort of, what would you say, event, for example, appearing on those panels? Do you think there's any value to those at all, even if it's like vaguely educational or anything else? Or is it just going to be whose team are you on, who do you support, do you want your beliefs validated and reinforced? Do you think there's any value to that sort of online sort of engagement?
You mean especially panels where they host both, at least two very contradicting sides?
Any like even if there's agreement with everyone on the sides, but yeah, especially if there is disagreement. Yeah, do you think there's actually like any value to that content, especially as it's become more and more pervasive and popular, or do you think it's literally just all going to descend into just who do you like, who gets the best dunks? Is it more about entertainment than anything else?
I do think so, yes. Obviously, I'm humble about my opinion. I could be wrong. This is a very nuanced and dispersed phenomenon. Nobody can just look out the window and see how this phenomenon is going. It's people in their bedrooms watching stuff, and we barely get to see the metric of views and likes. So I don't have any hard stats to go on.
Yeah.
But my personal view is that for the effort that it consumes and usually the aftermath it brings, I don't think it returns that into good influence or into something positive adding up.
Yeah.
In fact, and sometimes the centroids and the rightoids will bring up these woke takes that are supposed to like you're supposed to think, oh my God, what is the wokey saying? Oh my God, wow. And eventually either the fascistoids or the centroids have made what the woke said real, okay, by offering real life examples. Or other times, you can already see it's not all that unsensible. So there is this woke, let's say, talking point that debate is a form of white supremacy or a tool of white supremacy and stuff like that. And everybody loses their mind, Friended, Sitch, Lindsay, everyone, what? Oh my God, the woke are really gone off the charts this time. And But if you think about it, what happened when this kind of adversarial yelling match caught on? Eventually, what was promoted? What grew out of it? What became more popular through it? Generally, white nationalists, supremacists, and stuff like that. Now, obviously, when the woke say that line, it's hanging, especially when you do it the Tim Pool way and you just read the headline without the context and analysis.
Yeah.
You can think, whoa, that's like nonsensical. Like, debate is white supremacy. But there is a reason in the background where it works. If an audience is looking only for affirmation, nothing else, if their natural curiosity is at an all-time low, if their self-awareness is at an all-time low, and all they seek for is affirmation, yelling, screaming, match-style debates are the best, the best thing for those audiences.
Yeah.
And those audiences happen to be on the far right of the political spectrum, because the very low curiosity, like to spike a Nazi's curiosity, you have to involve Jewish people.
Yeah, exactly. You have to throw parentheses around everything.
Yeah. So their curiosity about like the awe of the universe, like what's there, like what's dark matter? Is it just a parameter of the physicists, or is it something real? Like, will we make it past like the year 2100? Like, if you don't have curiosity about anything and you know everything is the fault of that and that minority and they're just depriving us of that and that, then you can have the luxury of supporting a guy no matter what they say. It doesn't matter, you know? So imagine if every team arrives in the debate with something to lose, and a team arrives at the same debate with nothing to lose. It's not a fair debate anymore. And I don't agree that if you can throw the general statement, you know, debate is white supremacy out there, you've said something essentially meaningful. But if you narrow it down to the screaming match with no standards, that's very popular online, and combine it with the knowledge that only one type of audience absorbs all the nutrients they need from that thing, yes, you can see how it can be completely boosting and enhancing the performance of those ideas.
Yeah. Someone in my chat just mentioned Destiny and Vosh. So in some ways it's interesting that there's like almost like a parallel starting to develop on the left/progressive side of things as well. Obviously not as serious and dangerous as like, you know, the white nationalists getting emboldened and gaining something from debate, but that weird sort of cultural shift is starting to come through a lot more, it seems.
Yes, but now I will have to go to dangerous territory because I'm not a strictly materialist leftist. I don't think everything can be boiled down to material conditions, although broadly speaking, the tangible improvement you can do in a centralized manner is in the material conditions. I also believe in personal ethics and personal responsibility, but not in the bootstraps way, because I hate that. Yeah. I just believe it goes both ways. Both the system we live has to be fair, and we have to be fair. It can't be either way. Like, you could have a good system, but if unfair people populate it, it won't go too well.
Yeah.
Okay. Because no system will be perfect. Okay. And no system will be completely rigid. You know, usually laws and norms and ethics leave some wiggle room, because otherwise they would be like automatons like shooting at pedestrians who jaywalk from, the Tourette at every street corner. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want something as rigid as it wouldn't allow life or mistakes. So within that kind of flexibility that any system would provide, if you have too many dishonest people, they will rot the entire system.
Yeah.
Honey badger don't care if your system is bulletproof. It's not, erosion proof. Like, a few generations of extremely corrupt and bad faith people can completely twist it. Which is, for example, partly the story of America, in the sense that although there are intense fragments of racism, genocide, ethnic cleansing, even in the beginning of the American social democracy, at least the social democracy part was going somewhere. And then you had the John Birch Society, the White Citizen Organization, and stuff like that. White Citizens Council, whatever it was called,
Yeah.
who were not in the intrinsic sense systemic. They were not from the state, but they aggregated enough people on those talking points that eventually the social democracy died in America. And we are basically having a new wave of that. The Alex Jones and the Sargons are the John Birch Society of today, and especially PragerU. But the worrisome thought is that PragerU, who is actually funded by right-wingers and stuff, although their work is very polished and insidious and pernicious for that reason, they're still not the worst. That's the scary part for me. The worst are people from Sargon and further right. Although Prager is very right-wing, very dangerous, and very pro-ignorance and against science, by being a bit quaint, but by being non-confrontational, by not debating opponents, at least they keep it clean somehow. But the parasocial hook, the real addictiveness for low esteem, high affirmation need audiences comes with the other guys.
Yeah, there's not a community, like no one is like chewing at the bit to join online communities, like coalescing around PragerU. Whereas if you've got someone like, yeah, exactly. But if you've got someone like don't want to abuse the word, but someone with the charisma of like a Sargon or a Lauren Chen or something. Yeah, that's a far greater motivating factor, isn't it? That will move people. I know he keeps getting like routed out of every space he moves into, but yeah, there's a reason that the Groypers and Nick Fuentes, had momentum for that time that they did, and that's because they played into the memes. There was a personal investment you could be made into that community.
Yeah. And for me, that's partly where you see the Goebbelsian genius of what's his name anyway? Of Bannon.
Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon. Because he readily identified that you need people more like Sargon than people like PragerU to win the culture war. And this is the problem. They're waging the culture war alone. Not because there's no response from the left. There is a response from the left. But they stoop so low where they are masters of the game. When the other day, let's go back to the Destiny Vosh thing from the chat. The other day when Destiny was chatting with Sargon, Destiny was doing his smooth talk routine because he knew he was talking to a highly volatile person. Plus, I don't know, he wants to revisit the center because of his quarrels with the left. I won't guess too much on his motives, but what was certainly factually true was that Destiny was making an effort to be smooth and slow and kind of like buttery when he talked with Sargon. And Sargon did try to keep himself calm, but as soon as his narrative was kind of offended by what Steve said, he would hog the microphone and talk real loud. So Sargon was easily saying that stuff like, okay, Steve would say like, yeah, but look at his corona response. And Sargon would, but what could have he done? Like, even, like, he caught the flights from China, like, and they called him a racist. What do you expect him to do? And that's okay. Here's the thing, that's not a different opinion anymore. That's a biological weapon in the foundations of the political discourse.
Yeah.
And allow me to explain this really quick. If you lower the bar of what the government is accountable for so low, it doesn't matter if you have a lefty or a right wing or a centrist government anymore. It will be sheer genocide anyway.
Yeah.
Like if you, it's not okay. You want to prefer the right wing? Great. I want to prefer the left wing. Great. But if we objectively can't agree that having multiple briefings with the CIA and the intelligence community with severe warnings since November, December, January, and February, missing another bunch of those meetings, and skipping all the serious warnings that came from February to March from officials and CDC, the WHO, and ignoring all those huge, like, personal, information packets that the president gets, and playing it on sheer politicization and campaigning. Okay, if we can't objectively agree that this is bad, and whether a lefty did it or a right-winger did it, it's bad.
Yeah.
Then we open ourselves up to a kind of government that would literally kill us, and there would be no recourse. So that's how they win. When you stoop so low, it doesn't matter if you're Vosh, it doesn't matter if you're Destiny. If you're ready to be stomped in the face and killed by the people you worship, nobody can meet you there, basically. You're on a whole new level of Western ISIS.
I think one thing struck me when you were saying that, especially the last part, was just like, it's interesting how like some people try and draw distinction or try and draw comparisons between, for example, Trump and someone like Bernie Sanders. Like they sort of go for that nationalist angle, or at least the sort of more insular protectionist angle. And it seems to me that like, as you said as well, like, you know, having someone stamp on your face and things like that. Honestly, people are just looking for communities, and they're looking for strong figures to rally around and grip onto, because they will give them the narratives they want to try and comfort them, especially in like really dark and dangerous times like we're in now. You know, that's where they need to go. That's all they can rely on, because that's where they get their emotional validation and things like that. You know, Daddy Trump says that, you know, China did it, and it's all fake news. It's all a lie. You know. It's the extrapolation out from like that sort of Sargonite thing, isn't it? You know, instead of having a YouTuber from the new atheist crowd to sort of latch onto, you actually now have a fascist, and you will sort of stand up for them, you will protect them, and you will die for them.
Yeah, and this is the scary part. All the Twitter centroids and rightoids quote 1984, or at least mention it,
God.
or Orwell.
Yeah.
For years now, and usually they use it against some rad libs or whatever, or some college feminists, or, oh, you know, this is censorship and stuff like that. The point they missed from 1984 is that, especially in the movie, which is visual, but also in the book, there's an absence of large battalions of armored cars. There's an absence of vertical police and state force on your neck for
Yeah.
submission. Why is that? Because 1984 describes exactly what you said. When a society reaches a level where people are so insecure and superficial that they just want to believe in a figure that will tell them who to hate.
Yeah.
The creepy part about 1984 is that the people police each other. It's not the feminazis and it's not the Democrats. Okay, it's that level of reactionary society where they gave the key to the tyrants, and they're like, just tell me who to hate, boss. Just tell me who to hate.
Which is ironically the sort of counter narrative that the narrative that they would have pushed back in like the 2015, 2016 era, as you say, with the feminazis, quote unquote. You know, that's what they were expecting, and then they themselves became the ones who bought into it.
Yeah, yeah. And now that their far right, in America at least, gets a lot more militant and they start bashing 70-pound protesters when they stand at a body mass of 230 pounds.
Yeah. Armored up,
you see, it's all about sadism. There's nothing about the First Amendment there. I mean, that video traumatized me because I'm not very big. I'm not very big in size, but like I'm on the taller side, and generally like attacking somebody that would be below my chest seems like so like, oh my, like, you know what I mean, so low. And that Proud Boy on that video is like, oh, like this is the peak of my masculinity, and it's like, that's the 1984 society, when you're so animalistic that a shady father figure and something shady to hate are enough for you to give your consent to the government.
Yeah, that's one of the great ironies about this. It's like the fucking image. What is it? The libertarian snake image. Don't tread on me. Is now, it pretty much seems to be the sentiment has become either don't tread on me, tread on them, or tread on me, daddy. You know, that seems to be the thing. Especially when you look at, for example, images of like a police officer wearing like combat armor pushing a 70-year-old to the ground. It's incredibly bizarre to see those who sort of proclaim to be the defenders of liberty and freedom falling happily in line to defend those people.
The rightoids have spent the past 5 years verifying the most wild lefty theories about them. But this doesn't reflect in reality. Like, you can go back to the alt-right playbook, which is a series every centroid and rightoid craps on. You can go back to old Philosophy Tube videos with his 2017 predictions of how the folding out of the alt-right will play out.
Yeah.
And see that they are so close to the truth. It's scary. But there's no recognition from any other side than the left about those things, because it's untribalistic to do so.
Yeah.
While the left will eat itself up, as they say, with self-criticism and internal conflict, they can't even register basic truths. So really, again, to take it back to the debate conversation, once the opponent stoops too low, there's no way to win, really. There's a way to kind of like make your positions known in order to kind of like mitigate the strawman a bit. Although you being in public will create more strawmen unavoidably. And you can build a community on the lefty side. But we can't really win this game, I think, when the quality is so low, because basically the game demands that you mutilate your decency and sense of standards and any ethics you had left. And like, by the time you meet them there, you've lost, because you're a rightoid now. You know what I mean?
Did you see the presidential debate yet? or if you were intended to watch it at all, because you're not missing a huge amount. But one thing that struck me about it was actually one thing I appreciated about Joe Biden's performance, but at the same time, it was something that kind of unsettled me, was that Biden sort of bought into like the pugnaciousness of it. Like, he wasn't afraid to get a little bit dirty. Now, obviously, it's not like full-on dirtbag leftism or anything, but it almost did seem like Biden acknowledged that he would, to some extent, have to lower himself to Trump's level. So it's interesting you bring up that point, because honestly, on a sort of slightly smaller scale, that's kind of where it felt like the political... That's where it was going, even at like that high level of politics. That, you know, it's essentially, it had to become two old men like shouting at each other, and that's a pretty terrifying prospect.
When the quality of social exchanges and when the quality of society overall deteriorates, you can see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking from, you know, the rightoid narrative of declining civilization here.
Yeah.
Even by standard lefty metrics, like how are their labor rights, there is a decline. Like FFS, if you think about it, labor rights were more solid in 1969, 1970 than they are now.
Yeah.
And various things deteriorate. That doesn't mean the genes or, you know, the civilization.
You're not gonna suddenly put like a Greek statue in your profile picture or anything.
Nah, and oh my god,
statue of Marcus Aurelius or something.
I hate that stuff because, you know, in the old internet, some people did it unironically, but also in a well-meaning way. They were just attracted to old philosophy or old drama, and there was some sort of scholar or student, and it had nothing to do with this fast wave fake art. But anyway, my point being, we either recover. This is not about left and right anymore, in the sense that if the culture, the quality of our culture doesn't recover, we're not going to make it anyway. And when I talk about the quality of culture, like people like Adam Friended or other centroids, and it's where they start screaming, elitist, you're an elitist, you don't understand the people, and, you know, whatever. And first of all, like, I'm so pathetically working class, it's not even a joke. But then they go to this bigotry of low expectations, as they would say, against the working class, as if the working class is so fragile, you can't let them know they got something wrong. Oh my God, shocking. Like, that's how they generate this audience, though. They have people who have two GTX 1080 graphics cards. With that, by me, that clearly puts you outside the working class. Thank you. They have viewers like that who spend their days on like super chatting these asshats and playing video games. And okay, there might, some of them might be people with poor economics and working class and blah blah. But generally, they have this audience that knows the modest hardship of the Western middle class, and they have their victimhood so much enhanced by these creators. While usually we're like on the left side, we're talking either about the people that are below that in poverty, like the global south, or the real working class below the middle class, or we're talking about kind of like global threats like the environment. And also economic inequity is a threat, a global threat, because it then feeds terrorism, instability,
crime,
nationalist uprisings, fights, ultranationalism. Like, it's the worst. So yeah, okay, you can call the left wrong sometimes. We are wrong sometimes. You can call us, you know, whatever. Sometimes we're too, I don't know, sensitive or too subjective. Yeah, we can have our flaws. But in the big picture, we're not obsessing about a very thin threat that might happen just to us personally, like in a very gloomy black pill scenario that's really stretched. Like Sargon's, I think, primal fear is that trans activists turn his son into a mermaid.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing.
Uh,
There is a comfort you can derive from a victim narrative, isn't there? If you can convince yourself and a community you're in that you are victims, again, you can generate a communal sense because you have something to rally around. You're fighting against something. Whereas someone, for example, in the UK who's, working 2 jobs and still has to use food banks, or, simple fact that, like, queer people, especially like trans people of colour, for example, get murdered at a horrendous rate, yeah, that victimhood is very real, but it doesn't, these people cannot, the centroids, as you say, cannot rally around that, so they need to generate their own victimhood.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you don't have something to rally around, find something that exists, something other,
Yeah,
something
exactly.
real.
Yeah.
Like don't invent. Like my main interest with the center was between 2014 and 2016, I guess, because my worst fears about the fake Greek lefty party had become true, which didn't drive me away from the basic lefty principles of, empathy, human rights, human dignity, humans above property. It didn't push me away from those, but I became allergic to shallow talking lefty types with no solutions or no
Yeah.
actual spine on a plan. You know what I mean?
And it seems like, especially like in the context of the US election, especially with like the popularity that Biden had during the primaries, it seems like a lot of people just want to go back to what you just described as being the thing that put you off of that fake leftist party. I think a lot of people are going to have rude awakenings in November, assuming things even go vaguely well. That everyone just wants to go back to how things were pre-2015, basically, and it's going to be a very rude awakening because that ain't fucking happening. Like, Biden will win. Like, say Biden wins, and then say, like, the Democrats ending up getting the Senate and they hold Congress. There's no going back, is there? Like, nothing is going to return vaguely to how it was pre-Trump.
Yeah, Trump was like a slow burning 9/11 in the sense that nothing after 9/11 was the same
Yeah.
as before 9/11.
And also,
kind of
Trump
the
is
thing.
symptomatic of something that's been going on for a long time. As you could argue, he didn't just come out of nowhere. This has been boiling over for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. But to kind of like finish my initial thought, apart from the Biden tangent, so my main interest with the center was this, okay? Because Greek politics are severely twisted anyway. Because we are a small country, you can't use the massive statistics from other countries to predict what's going to happen here. For example, in Greece, you might have a semi-sensible, not very good, not free of corruption and not free of xenophobes, but a semi-functional right wing like we have now, and a completely misled left wing like we had in the past years. Again, it was a party rotted by the base in the sense that there was this niche, small lefty party with very respectable positions and members, but in their struggle to get popularity, they got all the old fake socialist voters from the most corrupt kind of like lefty government the Greek ever had back in the 80s. So all the disgruntled voters of that fake socialism, and I'll explain briefly in a second what I mean fake. All those disgruntled voters were attracted to this new niche party, and they corrupted it because they motivated the party to become shallow, extremely populistic and confrontational and tribalistic, like the old fake socialist party we had. So when they manifested in power as a government, they were just like the worst. And I wasn't just the only one noticing. Generally, the voters were completely dismayed, but also lefty thinkers and older lefties from Greece, they were all appalled. And there were, and you could be appalled like in any way, both because this fake lefty government we had enacted very neoliberal economic policies as they were forced by the EU because they didn't have any better functional suggestions themselves. So it was a neoliberal hellhole anyway. And because they just used the expressions and the pretenses of the left to justify their actions and sanctify themselves and pretend that it's not shit what they're doing, which I found mostly offensive. Like it's the worst thing. Okay. Of course, the hardcore old style communist party in Greece would have none of that. They were crapping on them from the beginning. And I definitely don't sympathize a lot with the Greek Communist Party, but the one thing they have is stable positions.
Yeah.
Their positions are stuck in leave NATO, leave the EU, peoples of the world unite. So, you know, at least they're genuine. So after 2014 and 15 especially, watching like country which already had a dozen problems get so damaged by somebody using lefty justifications, not principles, it kind of put me off this thing. And I was seeing it catch ground in Spain as well with Iglesias. And when I checked into Corbyn, I was seeing he was bringing, sorry to say, especially for my Brit friends, but he was bringing kind of the same kind of rot.
Yeah.
And the signature for that rot, for me, is when you cross the line from telling people their needs are true to telling the people they are right, that their impressions are true. Those are two different things. And generally, the left-wing intelligentsia in Greece, although the Greek people in the past used to be a lot more class conscious and a lot more educated in these matters, they were strict. The Greek lefty thinkers were strict about this. Like, you know, the people, the goal to free the people is you know, sacred. But that doesn't mean you free the people of their own responsibilities.
Yeah.
Okay, especially the responsibility of how they behave to other people like them, poor and challenged by the status quo. So I don't think Corbyn did this willingly, but he allowed Labour. There was, first of all, I don't know if I'm taking too long with this. I'll try to shorten it down. But with Tony Blair, really, Labour was destroyed in the sense that after so much Thatcherism and then that other clown, Major, who it was, the Brits were thirsty for some old school Labour, some, you know, working amenities and facilities for the working class, some opportunity for work. You know, they wanted something real when they voted Labour, and at least that's what I feel. Okay, that's what I see. And what they got is Blair, which was like I don't know, like a kind of softer Tory, a neo-lib in Labour. He didn't reestablish what people expected Labour to deliver.
Well, I mean, that was why it was explicitly called New Labour. It was, you know, I think they actually used to use the term the third way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. Looking back on it, yeah, not great.
But even with that bad foundation, Corbyn had 5 or more years to work with the matter, and against him, he had one of the most incompetent lineups the Tories have ever fielded. So it's not that like it was impossible for him to do it, but what he did was allow all these populistic tendencies that eroded the Greek left and the Spanish left to also erode the British left.
Yeah.
This Euroscepticism. Okay, Euroscepticism is good, but if you have specific issues and specific suggestions, this general vague idea the EU are vampires and they're bad and they're colonialists, that's hogwash, man. If you allow your voter base to be infected by that without rebutting it and strongly condemning that way of thinking, you're not doing well. Because that's the same we had in Greece. And in Greece, I was almost kind of forced by the reality to check at what's going on in the center. Because when the crisis started getting heavy here, if you went to the town square to see what's happening, there was a protest, which half of it was Nazi and Nazbol, and half of it was far left.
Yeah.
But it was the only period in time when these two sides did not kick each other when they met in the street. And anyway, long story short, all that gave me some left-wing fatigue. And I looked at the center, and because I'm not the old school kind of dorkish fedora atheist where like, oh, I'm rational, and these 5 seconds of video I just watched are not rational. Discarded. So because I'm not like that, I allow things to ferment in my mind, you know?
Yeah.
And combat the ideas and integral principles I have in my mind already. I don't have to do the work. I just watch something, and then later when I wash the dishes, that something has to defend itself from attacks from my neurons. But long story short, I watched a lot of what would be far right, but what was then centroid, kind of skeptoid content.
Yeah.
And to make an absolutely honest confession, to a degree, it was appealing to me. But then over time, nothing new, nothing substantial, nothing meaningful, nothing structural was there. So the first alarm I get from my whatever moral apparatus I have is what you consume intellectually is low nutritionally. So that's the first alarm, because it means I'm fooling myself. That's the first part. Like, if this appeals to me, but it's not nutritious, why does it appeal to me? Well, apparently it appealed to me because I had lefty fatigue. Great. Then I tried to really understand what these people are saying, because I noticed that between my IBS inflammation and my busy life, I was watching their crap while eating or before going to bed, so I wasn't necessarily truly skeptical about it. So I started watching their stuff with a more studious approach. By the way, keep in mind that these people were becoming worse and worse every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So at the moment where I started scrutinizing their content, it was also becoming worse and worse. So let's remember that. So then I started linking things together, and I was again in a small hiatus from YouTube. I was in a 6-month hiatus or something because of IBS, and I was getting ready to return to YouTube and basically revise all the anti-race realism videos I made in 2017 and 2018, like basically 4 or 5 videos, I don't remember. I was trying to see how I would revise them, because I was strongly disagreeing, if not in the fundamentals, at the very least with the presentation and framing of my videos from then. And instead of that, I find the alt-right and the centroids attacking Kraut.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is no joke time. I instantly realized that my worries about the center were not only right, but also very late. I was not anticipating the curve. I was behind it. They had already moved to phase 2 before me understanding phase 1 even. So me understanding the centroids and the rightoids happened very strongly through the lens and through the particular details and facets of the crowd drama. Because not only was that a giant stimulus on its own and all the gathering conversation around it, but I was getting information from the inside of what's happening. And how many like ridiculous online spy crap the far right was trying at that period, even against all skeptoids. Most people don't understand in the left, the rightoids would execute the skeptoids when they got what they wanted. It's just that the centroids are more popular than the rightoids, and they want that popularity funnel. And that was the exact blackmailing they were doing to the skeptic celebs. And basically, crowd accidentally became the first one they tried it on real hard. But in the background, the same thing without much public drama happened to everyone, to Sargon, to Kilroy, to the Kilroy event organizers. They were approached by far-righters, initially as chatting mates in streams or whatever. They formed some associations with them, whatever, blah, blah. We had a nice discussion with this guy. But then the rabid audiences, the chan boards, the doxers, the hackers, would go after them with kind of the implicit blackmail of, if you don't get firmly on our side and if you don't firmly support us and continue criticizing us, we'll keep pestering you. And that acquired physical nature in the Kilroy event and stuff like that. Physical in the sense that it would regard a physical event.
Yeah.
And there it was like, first it was a wave of complaints. Oh, you have no one from the non-conservative right there. How can you call yourself an open platform and speakers and blah blah? So they guilt tripped Kilroy into accepting one or two of them, and then those two became a Trojan horse, where it was like, yeah, but you have to call this one, and why do you need this shit lib speaker? Throw them away and bring my friend X and X. And you know, that happening as chandlords and various people pestering, harassing, doxing the organizers. So I saw that happening, and then people say, "Oh, some centroids or rightoids I had talked to back then, or had some Twitter exchanges, whatever. All of them, they're like, oh, now you're far left. Oh, you're woke. Oh, you're crazy. Or you're like," and it's like, yeah, excuse me. When the fascists knocked on the door, the only people that would take up the task of answering the door were the left. Yeah. I'm sorry, you're all cowards. And in a world where the likelihood of fascism is still around, yes, of course. Like, I can only align with the left because there's no one else that would do that fight any justice. Not to also say that everyone is, apart from the left, is also blind to the problems our system has to a large degree, and they want to beautify everything. Like, did you know that, the burger, a crappy burger now costs like 1,000 working hours less than it costed in 1832? Like, dude, I don't care. We will only be able to produce these burgers for 40 years. After that, we won't have a climate. Yeah, you exactly. Idiot. Plus, it's a crappy burger. I can eat a lot cheaper, potatoes and beans, whatever. But you get my larger point there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I went on a long monologue.
No, it's cool.
I'll give you a second to recuperate, and I'll fetch me a beer if that's okay.
Yep, I need to grab something as well. Yep, be right back.
Stay with us, chat.
I'm actually kind of jealous I don't have any beer in there. How you doing, chat? How's everyone doing? 5 viewers. Thank you, everyone, for stopping by. If anyone's new here, we do stuff like this at least once a week. We just get some people on to talk. Next week, it'll be on Wednesday at 7:30 UK, which is 2:30 Eastern if you're in the United States. We are talking to a Dutch YouTuber and Zoomer called Lext. He does a range of stuff. He does a little bit of political stuff. He mainly does like film and media criticism now. He does some stuff on trans issues as well, but yeah, Lext is really, really cool. So yeah, this is something worth checking out, regardless of whether or not they're going to be on. But yeah, it's going to be a good one. Wednesday next week.
I'm back, by the way. Just
hey, you're right. I'm just giving a shout out for my next guest who's going to be on next week. Awesome. Yeah, so yeah, we've got Lex coming on next week. What was I going to say? One thing I appreciate about like being friends with you and stuff. In some ways, it's not necessarily the best thing, but it's like I've got someone to share my Doomer pills with. Because it's been a long fucking 4 years, isn't it, man? It's just been like this entire last part of the last decade has just been rough, and I can't believe it.
Oh yeah.
Like, imagine going back in time even a few years and explaining to yourself what like 2020 was like. You know, it's an unbelievable space that we're in now.
Oh yeah. 2017 felt a lot like that for me in the end, because when the crowd drama erupted, you know, all those conspiracies that neo-Nazis have for Jewish people,
yeah,
turns out those conspiracies describe how the neo-Nazis act. And from December 2017 to, I don't know, probably June 2018, I was living in this constant meme where the same actors, and by that I don't mean cinema actors,
the same figures,
the same figures were behind an entire cascade of events, and whatever was happening, we would run into the same figures doing the same stuff, pulling the strings. And it was also a very big and loud proof that it's not the high IQ. It's like, it's not the smart people or the good people or whatever that get ahead necessarily. Okay? It can be just the people that lower the bar so much that only them can play the game, you know? And so there was this cabal that included small foot soldiers from the Chan boards and larger figures like Ethan Ralph and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also figures like Allsup, which was trying his way for Congress or something like that. And they were unleashing a war of broad spectrum. They were attacking people's families, private lives, jobs, channels. It was everything. They were waging an all-out war to colonize basically the online center. And for that entire year, I had the feeling you described. It was like, if I traveled back in time 5 months and told me this shit, I would never believe it. And like the fact that some of the centroids I had talked to by that time, like Friended and Mouthy Buddha, were coming up in servers with certain characters of these things. And then I would see them defending, or even as Mouthy Buddha attack a crowd. Like, you know, it was oh my God, it makes sense. I just didn't want to know necessarily. Like it was such a kind of moment. And then all my genuine curiosity, whether there's constructive cooperation that can be done with the center got destroyed pretty early in 2018 because even if the crowd thing hadn't happened, by that time it was visible that the center was moving at the speed of sound towards the right wing.
Yeah.
Every week they had to up the notch, or they would. You posted creeds, bro. You will lose subs. They would, they would lose subs if, like, 1 week it's kind of, not too much immigration, please. The other week, immigrants are, invaders. The other week, it's like, the Democrats are communists. The other week, they had to constantly up the notch. So
Yeah.
even if I had somehow unsuccessfully estimated the situation and kept approaching the center, I would smell it at some point. But the crowd thing was an early call, and also it gave me a great view of the back end, which was petty, narcissistic assholes competing for online attention with zero rules. It was really pathetic. So yeah, that killed my short-lived 2-year interest in centrism and settled me back to the left where I came from.
The thing is, like, I don't like political labels very much when I talk about myself, but gun to my head, I always sort of basically describe myself as a sock dem. Although I have had people describe me as a left libertarian before, which I found a bit weird. But personally, like, the idea of centrism is like just always seems like a nice idea in principle. Taking the best bits from the left, taking the best bits of the right, coiling up in the middle and like coming up with something new and fresh. But yeah, it just consistently seems to just sort of, your hands grip onto the sides of the Overton window and you always inevitably go right. And I think that's a really interesting phenomenon. I don't get why it doesn't seem to go in the other direction though.
I can very easily tell you, I'm not a big brain either. It's just that it's simple.
Go on.
What we call today left wing didn't even exist before the French Revolution. And it doesn't exist exclusively because of the French Revolution, but it didn't exist before it. This means that right wing, what we today called right wing, was 2 centuries ago what we would call everything Gary Oldman style.
Yeah.
Like the Whigs, the Tories, they fought each other, but both right-wing. Everything. Yeah. Monarchism, colonialism, Rome, everything, if you think about it, it's right-wing. It's just that if you go all the way back to the classical years, they were somewhat tolerant of gay people and stuff like that. But the broad systemic tendencies, at least fiscally and materially, were right-wing.
Yeah.
Concentrate stuff in the rich hands because the rich hands are the more capable hands. That has been the story since the empires. Now, notably, the Romans did it a bit better because they understood that a strong base, a stronger working class, is good for the empire. But they stopped doing it because of corruption, and then they collapsed. So, although they proved that, keeping your base strong is wise, even if you're just a profiteer, they also proved that they couldn't handle doing it. So they were decimated. My point being that everything we know in political human history, apart from the past 200 years, was right-wing, in the sense that right-wing just is the status quo. So everything will gravitate, even the center, towards the status quo because it's the major gravitational attractor around us. It's the status quo.
And which is why far-right people can capitalise on, as you said earlier about the Kraut situation, people can sort of seize and capitalise on seizing the centre ground because they're basically, they're already aligned underneath. They're all on the right anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And although I will admit there are many, many things I strongly disagree with parts of the far left, the general average of the left, and by that I mean the proper left. Okay, I don't mean Nazbol. I don't mean fake leftists from
Yeah.
Vice or whatever. I mean the left. Um, but I align very close to the average line of the left. Although I disagree with some fringe or some far left positions, and quite a few of them, to be honest. But at least the broad scope of the left is centered on the things that matter to me: human empathy and a non zero sum game view of life. I don't want other people to lose for me to gain.
Yeah.
I want us to gain together. Okay? So those broad aspects will always be, my heart will always be closest to how the left sees those things. But the other sides are not even at this level. It's not like you can join a little bit of center or a little bit of right and find a niche corner and say, the general right wing might suck, but this corner is for me. No, because they're in a suicidal, sorry for the word, but they're in a suicidal conflict with reality. We have some, in the left, we have some romantics that whitewash Stalin a bit, or whitewash a generalized form of communism and disregard the things that could go wrong with it.
Yeah.
But you also have strong criticism for that from the left wing itself. So it's not like we're about to like jump off the cliff together on that. But the polarization makes at least the right wing, and I would say also the center, but it makes at least the right wing completely fanatical in the dedication they show to their figureheads. And that's just before the plastic cups with the Kool-Aid come out, man. That's the cult moment right before Jim Jones passes around the drinks.
It's one of the great ironies of the left, isn't it? That one of its best features, as you said, like alluded to, like the ability to the general ability. It's not always done in the most healthy way, but the ability to self-critique, critique others, like within leftist spaces. That's valuable in keeping people honest and like making sure that values are being capitalized on, positions are evolving. But also, yeah, it does. There's still division there by default, which obviously the right doesn't have. The right is very good at falling into line, even with other parts of the right that they don't agree with, or like may not be as fanatical as.
Yes, a way you can get that with a loose structure of principles is when your principles are either hate or external,
Yeah.
meaning the principles in the right, in the left. I mean, you're supposed to be the one that keeps the principles when you're in the left. In the right, it can be, oh, if women kept by the principles, they wouldn't have a problem. If black people kept, like if everyone else kept by the principles, they wouldn't have any problem. So in the right, it can be just the assumptions that principles are right, I'm doing them right, all the other people are doing them wrong, they shouldn't complain.
Which is why you've got things like the tradcon wife memes and stuff like that. Literally, that atavistic sort of looking back to a time that didn't actually exist, but you've convinced yourself is the principle you need to rally around.
And no, look, you're broadly right. This time that they imagine didn't exist for any lengthy stretch of history. But I would counter argue that this thing they imagine, it did exist for a short time in history. Yeah. What time? Social democracy time, suckers, in post-war America. Like, it was the big government lefty fucking whatever conspiracy.
90% tax rate for the upper earners. Yeah.
Yeah, it was FDR's extremely progressive financially administration. And whatever these traders like the family units. Yes, like if you want a family unit that's not a starved mother, a wife-beater father, and 16 barefoot children, if you want that family unit that you think five like well-dressed members, two adults, three children, like the family unit. Yeah, when did that happen? Under Labour in Britain and under Roosevelt in America.
Yeah.
Like it didn't happen a second before that. Like show me where are the Victorian family units when people were crumbed up like in 2 dozens per house. My God, like imagine having sex and your children not being able to hear it. Like that
Yeah,
happened
exactly.
after FDR. Okay. Seriously. Like, yeah, like you do the simple math. You go back 50 years from FDR, you go back to, let's say, 1880s in Ireland, and there are like two adults or two adults and a grandmother in a house, and they're like already 8 children, but you know, somehow they're gonna get a 9th child. Okay, when they all live in 2 rooms, like how do you think did the sex will go in terms of sound? Okay, I know it's a creepy thought to have, but it just goes to show that we're not appreciating the level and standard of living we have right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to the left, I'm saying that to the right, because they always come up with this straw man of history, like the Western world was built on free speech and truth and meritocracy. No, no, no. It was built on stolen texts from other civilizations, gunpowder, and genocide.
Yeah.
But then the labor class put its ass on the line to give this construct a somewhat human face through the labor movement and the civil rights movement. That's what happened.
And that's where the distinction, the things they disagreed with came in. It was when things like social progressivism kicked up.
Yeah, and you don't have any reactionaries before social progress, because the only thing they are negative about is social progress. Before that, they wouldn't be reactionaries. They would be just monarchists and Whigs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that we had like at least 1,500 years of the status quo. If you want to exclude the classical period because they were sexually progressive, okay, I get it. Let's give them that. But we've had 1.5 millennium of conservative, basic majoritarianism ruling everything. And 150 years of progressivism? No, that's too much. Take us back, please. Take us back to that golden past. Like, seriously? Snowflakes? Like...
We're coming up just over it's been over 2.5 hours already. I've really enjoyed it. I'm just wondering if there's any questions from chat, or otherwise, if you're okay, we can maybe wind up for the evening. I can let you enjoy your beer and start your weekend.
Oh yeah, no problem. And I understand I was a bit, abusive with the microphone time. And
I invited you on because I wanted to hear your thoughts. It's fine. It's cool. I love talking to you. I love listening to you. If nothing else, because you're significantly smarter than I am. But no, it's been absolutely cool. I would like to do this again. I think I should probably get my arse in gear and maybe sort out some panels as well. So I'd love to have you on for one of those if you're ever up for that. I know we were critiquing panels earlier, but it still could be like hopefully a good time and that. But yeah, I think chat's gone a little bit silent. But yeah, no, it's been really good. I really appreciate it. You coming on, but I got to admit there is part of me that's just kind of like, I'm so burnt out. I'm so like, I think I need
20
to talk to friends right now as well because I'm just so exhausted with everything.
Yeah, 2020 is really testing us all.
Yeah,
But,
definitely.
you know, maybe that's not so bad. Maybe good old reality is giving us a warning shot. I know.
Well, I mean, that's another thing as well. Is like I don't know if this is a slightly rose tinted thing, but like I've been wondering a lot recently about the idea that things are horrible. It's entirely likely that things are going to get worse, but it's not really the end of the world. It's like literally okay. Climate change will be the end of the world, or at least it will be the end of humanity, at least. But yeah, I suppose broadly speaking, there is still hope, despite how far away it may seem right now. Things
Oh,
can be
yeah.
done and things can change.
Oh, yeah, there is reason to fight. And we're definitely not the most beaten generation by hardship. But the situation is also very disheartening. And although I try to get over that, I won't blame the people that get disheartened.
Yeah. Anything from chat, or are we good? Michael in my chat says, "Good stream, man. Glad I could make it." Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can have some more structured talk around a more specific topic in the future, and I could have you over my way. I'm just trying to get over these recursive IBS flare-ups I'm having for months now, since December. It looks like I'm reaching a point of ease right now. It looks like I'm getting over it. So hopefully I'll get back to videos and streaming. But in any case, yeah, we could have more chat, and we could try to get a couple people more and have a panel.
I definitely want to get Jangles on. We've discussed it a couple of times, but obviously he's insanely busy at the moment, especially with like school and everything. Yeah, I would definitely like to. If we could get a panel with like you and Jangles and maybe some other people, that'd be really awesome. I am going to drop your channel into chat now. So really check that out. I do love your stuff. I can't wait to see you come back when you're ready. And
it will happen probably in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. I've already answered a couple of comments that asked me for an earlier date, but I failed.
Fair enough. Okay, here's your Twitter going into the chat. Okay, thank you so much. I love you, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Enjoy your beer. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Cause. Thank you, chat. Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy.
Bye-bye.